So if we're ready to go, I'll get started here. Hi, my name is Ray Terrace, and I'm the author of What is Success and the website whatissuccess.com. And I've got those 3 Kindle type books there. Now, I'm building this webinar mainly for creators. And by creators, I mean anybody who makes something new in their life. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but I decided to. When I was about 15, 16, my last year of high school, I had a really hard time in school. And coming to the end of school, like I'd received the same advice as everybody else, that I had to go out and get a job and work hard and so on. And in England at that time, that's about early 60s, you were sort of expected to get a job and stay there until you retired. If you'd had more than 2 or 3 jobs, then you just weren't employable anymore. You were considered flighty. So I was looking at that when I was a young fella. And along with a bunch of other things at that time, I was so incredibly depressed that I came close to committing suicide at that time. But something pulled me back from that. I realized just how much it would hurt my family. And I stood back and I thought, no way. There is no way I'm going to let other people run my life. It's my life. I'm here to live, and I need to do it my way. And that was the first and most major changing point in my life. Anyway, I did work for a couple of years, but then I thought, no, this is not for me. And I decided to go traveling. And I started traveling around England and parts of Europe. And then, of course, I came to Canada and traveled around here. And in my journeys, I met so many creative people, artists, musicians, thinkers, inventors, would-be entrepreneurs. And they were just stuck. They couldn't get ahead. They were working in jobs that they really didn't like. In fact, they hated. So it became very important to me to try and find out, how do we get away from this? How do we get away from this society where people are, put in these little boxes and they have to work day after day? So I decided, okay, let's work with the creators. So as I say, when I'm talking about creative, I mean people like artists, entrepreneurs, inventors, and even society changers. Because I think they're the ones that actually create a society, and they're the ones that we need to work with and help. Now, creators are different from, quote, normal people. We're not content to just sit in boxes and do what society expects of us. The boxes I'm talking about are the social boxes, you know what I mean. The ones that most people are sort of comfortably uncomfortable in. Getting in there and, oh, my little thing's not working. Okay, that's better. Okay. 40 hours a week and doing the things that you're expected, behaving in certain ways, and just not being different or weird according to society standards. Now, it's not easy to break away from society's expectations. As I say, I met some incredibly talented and intelligent, creative people when I was traveling, and they became stuck in these 9-to-5 jobs. And this leads to a sort of desperation. And often they try and numb the pain. They turn to drugs or alcohol. And it's such an incredible waste of talent. And it annoys me so much. All of these people could be contributing so much to society. And if they received just a bit more understanding, little training and a little support. I find this is very true with younger people, late teens, early 20s. Quite often on the internet, if you ever um, look at some of the chat areas and stuff, there's so many of them talking about depression and so on. And that's terrible. Now, creative people, they're not that well understood by society. They can be liked and admired, but they're still sort of a little strange. You know, ooh, they're told that their ideas aren't going to work or get a real job, you know, that kind of stuff. People just don't understand that um, they're just different. And when you get somebody like, say, Sir Richard Branson there, I just had his picture there. All right, I bet when he first started out, people thought he was totally crazy. You know, he was probably, his parents probably even said to him, hey, get a real job, or his friends, get a real job. He was crazy. But of course, now he's rich. He's not crazy, he's just eccentric. And but that's one of the reasons I really like this group, like the MFM School of Online Business group, um, because most of you are very creative. And what I've seen, you're all creative. You know, you're all into the entrepreneurial spirit, and you're doing things. And so it makes me, I feel like I fit in here. You know, I'm not the only weird one out there. Sorry, I don't mean to say that. I think you're all weird. Well, maybe you are. But anyway, I can fit in. I really love this group. Okay. So that's who I'm working for, is the creators. I'm trying to break them loose and preferably grab them while they're still young so that they can do things. But let's have a look at boxes. What makes up a box? What's in the boxes? Well, fixed ideas, false information, prejudices, stereotypes, different beliefs, and a lot of other people's expectations. And we don't really look at them, you know, they've just been there our whole lives. And they make you act and think in a certain way, or believe strange things. I'll give you an example. Being as you're Americans, before I came over to Canada, I was sort of wondering if I should even come over here. I thought, well, my dad's Canadian and he wasn't too bad, so maybe Canadians aren't that bad, but I'd heard a lot about Americans when I was growing up. You have to remember this was right after the Second World War, and Americans were too over, according to the English. They were overfed, overpaid, oversexed, and overheard. So when I came over to North America and actually traveled down into the States, I was amazed to find that, hey, these people are actually quite normal. Well, as normal as most people get anyway. So that was one of the sort of stereotype prejudices that get put in there, and it creates a barrier. You know, if I'd have had if I wasn't quite so adventurous, I probably never would have traveled down to the States, and I would have missed out a lot. Now, I don't want to live in a box. You know, we're told to think outside the box, but that's not good enough. I don't want to even live in a box. At least have a box that's so big that I can dance around in it. So what keeps these things in place? Just a second, I lost something there. Oh, okay. Well, we're the ones that are keeping these things in place. And what happens? I'll just do a bit of drawing here if I can. So we're told that we have to think outside the box here. You'll excuse my drawing, I hope. And here we are, and we're supposed to think outside here. But what happens, especially if you're starting a new business or something, heading over that way and you run into this barrier, well, maybe I'm not good enough. You get past that one and there's another barrier. I don't have the money. And then there's another barrier. I'm too young, I'm too old. And it becomes more like a maze. So even when you know where you want to go, even when you've got the goals and everything else, you run into all these barriers that we've built up in our minds. And fortunately, knowing that we are the ones holding them there, nobody else is holding these barriers in there. We're the ones that are holding them there. And because we are the ones holding them there, then we're the ones that can remove them. All the doubts, all the fears, fixed ideas, and so on, they're in our minds. And we basically unknowingly just follow all that old training and information. And the thing is, as I say, it's so natural to us. The ideas that we've lived with us all of our lives. So they feel normal. And we never look at them. And we never analyze them. And that's why quite often coaching works. Because if we're living in this box here, it's very hard to see the outside of the box. Whereas somebody outside, they can see the outside of the box and they can point out, they can steer you to look at this outside of the box. Now, once getting rid of these ideas is not that difficult. You just have to be able to really examine them, and then they usually just go away. The trick is learning how to look at them. Now, the mind itself is incredibly powerful. Let me clear that off there. Okay. The mind is an incredibly powerful mechanism, and there seems to be two parts to the mind. There's the reasoning part. That's the part that we use every day. It's what am I going to have for supper, or what am I going to wear today? It's what you think with. It's what you're listening to me with, probably. I hope. And that's fine. That works great. But then you go below that, and a lot bigger. There's what people call the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind is, well, you can sort of compare it to a supercomputer. It's full of all of this data, all these programs that were built up over the years. Now, it's a very useful and necessary mechanism because it runs our daily lives and activities and thoughts. If you had to stop and think, how do I walk, or how do I, even to the point of how do I drive my car, or how do I use my knife and fork, you'd go crazy. If you had to use your reasoning mind for every little action you take throughout the day, then it would drive you crazy and you'd probably get into all kinds of accidents. So the subconscious mind has all these mechanisms and so on for controlling your daily actions. And that's great, but the problem is it doesn't think. Again, it's like a computer. It doesn't stop and analyze the data. It's just got all these programs that it runs. So you say, okay, you don't know you think this, but you decide to walk from one side of the room to the other. You don't have to think about it. The subconscious mind just, picks your body up and changes the muscles and so on, and it walks. So it doesn't think. It just reacts and acts upon us as a real physical force and mental force, and it acts upon us below our normal reasoning mind, usually. And most people don't realize just how powerful the subconscious mind can be. I'm sure you guys have studied it somewhat, but in the mid 60s, I did happen to get a job. Actually, it was my first job. I worked in a medical hospital as a medical lab technician. And in this hospital, there was a group that had decided to do a bunch of research into hypnosis and how it affects patients in particular. Because at that time in the 60s, hypnosis had been around for a long time, but nobody had ever really studied it and how it affected the body. So they had all of these expert hypnotists there, and they were, trying out different things. And I went to watch all of these demonstrations, and the things they could do was absolutely incredible. Um, one of the guys, he hypnotized somebody and just informed him he couldn't feel pain, and then they started jabbing needles in this guy, and he didn't feel it. Another one, they stretched a rope across in front of him and hypnotized him to believe that there was nothing there. And he kept trying to walk through this rope, and he couldn't understand why it wasn't going anywhere. So the subconscious mind, it can affect and does affect all of your senses. And so you can be seeing things that aren't there, or not seeing things that are there. You can be feeling things when there's no reason to be feeling something. This sort of explains quite a lot why certain people, you hear about people who are always sick. Well, they are always sick. And the more they tell themselves they're sick, the more they are sick. Or accident prone people, I'm always having accidents. Well, the subconscious mind is shutting down the perceptics. They may not even be able to see the danger coming at them. So they run into it. Okay? Um, I'll give you an example. This is from myself, and how the subconscious mind can be adjusted. When I was in my 30s, I started getting sick quite a lot, and this was an actual physical illness. I went to the doctor, and they gave a bunch of tests and said, took these swabs from here and there, and said, "Yep, you've definitely got a nasty bug there, and we'll give you some antibiotics." And that they did, and sure enough, it cleared it up. I need to come back a month or two later, and I get sick all over again. And this happened 2 or 3 times, and the doctors were starting to get really worried that I had one of these super bugs, that kept changing to counteract the antibiotics. Anyway, I was talking to a friend of mine. She was a counselor. We were sitting there one day, and we started talking about this. And she said, "Well, let's see if we can find out what it is." Anyway, we chatted for a while, and I realized that I'd taken a job, one of the few jobs I'd worked out for other people, and I hated it. I hated being there. And I looked at that and I said, "Well, that's probably why I'm getting sick all the time, but all right, is there more to it?" Well, then we were kicking it around a bit more, and I realized that when I was younger, like about 6 or 7 years old, I'd become really ill. It was all the childhood illnesses at once, and I was off school for 2 months. Well, for me, that was a reward. I hated school, even at that early age. I didn't like it. So for me, that was a reward, and that sort of gets fixed in the mind. Uh, you don't want to go somewhere, you don't want to do something, you get sick. Subconscious mind just shuts down your immune system and takes one of the many bacteria that are hanging around, and there's always bacteria around everybody. It shuts your immune system down, lets these things take hold, and where you go, you're sick. Uh, but once I've realized that, once I've realized that was what I was doing, I said, "Well, that's stupid. There's better ways of handling things than getting sick." and it never happened again. Well, what does all this have to do with social boxes? As I said, we're the ones holding them in place. And just take a look at just how the boxes are made. Where does the social mind get all this stuff? It starts off when we're really young. This next slide here. When we're just young and our parents really want to take care of us. At that age, our survival depends entirely on the adults around us. So anything that they say, any actions that they take, goes into the mind, particularly the subconscious mind, because at that age we don't have any filters in place. We haven't even built up the frontal lobes that help us analyze. You know, we cannot distinguish right from wrong or anything. So anything that an adult, particularly a parent, says or does must be the right thing. One of the first things that parents do is they want to protect their children, which is right, but then they won't let them try anything new, or they make them be very careful. They don't want them to take any chances. My mum, I love my mum, but she would get a little too carried away with the way she told us to handle things. You know, like she'd see me climbing a tree, or one of my brothers climbing a tree, or playing around with stuff. And it wasn't, you know, oh, you're going to get hurt. It was, you're down from there, or you're going to break your neck, or you're going to poke your eye out. You know, it wasn't some minor circumstance that was going to happen to us. And even when, oh, right, yeah. When a child is sick, parents obviously want to take care of them. But around children especially, you have to be very mindful of what you say. If a child gets sick or hurt, they're in pain, and anything you say to them goes right into the subconscious mind. If you remember in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill talks about if you want to plant a thought in the mind permanently, you put it in there with emotion. But when a child is sick and injured, there's lots of emotion and there's lots of pain. And it really fit, you know, everything that's said around them totally goes in there and it sticks. Now, when I got sick as a kid, my mum would say something like, "Oh, my poor baby." Think about that. What does that do? As I said, the subconscious mind, it doesn't evaluate or reason. So what does it interpret? My poor baby. Poor. So here you are, you're poor. You're going to be poor. Broke. No money. And baby. You're not going to grow up. I think the psychologists or the psychiatrists, they used to call it a Peter Pan syndrome. You know, some people, they never mature, they never grow up. So these are the things that are sort of pushed into us when we're really young. And then, of course, around the age of 5 or 6, 5 in England or 6 over here, we are shipped off to the education factory. Yeah. We shipped off to the education factory for more formal indoctrination. I suppose I should call it education, but I got a problem with our current system. I don't know if you guys are reading that right now. You know, truth comes from authority. Intelligence is the ability to remember and repeat. Accurate memory and repetition are rewarded. Non-compliance is punished. Conform intellectually and socially. I don't know what schools are like now, but that was very definitely the way it was when I was younger. As an aside, I don't know if any of you have ever listen to that lecture by Sir Ken Robinson on TED Talks. He's got one in there. I've got the link down there, but I don't know if you'll have time to copy it. But if you go to TED Talks and you search for Sir Ken Robinson talks about how schools destroy creativity. It's an excellent video for anybody who's interested in education or just, you know, how people should be treating children. It's well worth listening to. Anyway, so we send off to this indoctrination factory, this school, and we're told where to go, when to be there, what to do, how to do it, and we're put under some pretty heavy control. And we're definitely not encouraged to think. And asking questions at our school, it was just generally discouraged. Even the other kids would look at you, what are you, some sort of dummy or something? You've got to ask questions. But for me, one of the worst things that schools do is they say mistakes are bad. You make too many mistakes, then you're a stupid failure, period. That's it. And that's a terrible thing to put into a child, you know, growing up thinking that mistakes are such a terrible thing and you're a failure if you make mistakes. Now, don't get the idea I'm against a proper education. I think education is very important, but it needs, you know, a complete overhaul. So Ken mentions that the system that we have now, it was put in place, you know, over 100 to 150 years ago when the industrial age first started, and it was pretty much designed to turn out factory workers, and it was good for that, but it just doesn't fit anymore. So it needs changing, and the idea that one size fits all just doesn't work. You know, you have probably a third of the class sitting there and they can't keep up. So they get totally lost and frustrated and bored. And then you got another third of the class that are so far ahead that they are totally bored. You know, we've heard this a dozen times already, you know. And I was always totally bored at school, you know. Oh, for crying out loud, how many times are you going to tell me that 2 plus 2 equals 4? Give me a break here, you know. So I'd sit there and I'd fidget and I'd look out the window. Fortunately for me, the ADD and the ADHD, they hadn't been invented when I was in school, so they couldn't drug me into submission. Anyway, that's enough of my rant about the school system. But I got to say, I really did not have a good time there. I think it needs changing. So what's the next thing we hear? We're getting ready to leave school and we get this fantastic advice on how to succeed. You go out and you get a job and you work hard. Well, so we go out and we get a job. And we're told where to go, when to be there, what to do, how to do it. And again, we're under some heavy control. And in many of the workplaces, again, you're not expected to think or be creative. Just do it, okay? Just do it this way because that's the way we've always done it. And any sort of creativity is quite often frowned upon, especially in the low-end jobs. So those are the three main areas that our subconscious mind gets all of its information. Of course, the subconscious mind apparently never sleeps, and we are continually getting input from friends, family, peers, other people, TV, and so on. And it's just overwhelming the amount of information that gets put in there, and a lot of it is just wrong. Unfortunately, one of the things that I didn't mention earlier, actually, there's a couple of things that I was going to mention with this education and so on. We're put into this controlled situation. We're controlled from the time we're born all the way up until we're in our teens, late teens. And then if we go to work, then you're still controlled. So we never learn to control ourselves. And that's terrible. We don't learn that skill. And particularly for somebody starting a business, you need to learn to control yourself. When you're starting a business, especially a home business, and I'm sure that's why a lot of home businesses fail, is they just cannot hold a regular work schedule. They have interruptions. People think, well, because you're at home, you can be interrupted, or you'll start doing something that you're not really comfortable with, and well, maybe I can take a break now and goof off and so on. So that's one of the reasons that businesses fail. And of course, the other areas that I talked about, we've been taught not to take chances. Well, to start a business, you have to take chances, right? You're going to be able to think, and you're going to make mistakes, and you've got to be happy about making mistakes as long as you can turn them into learning experiences. So all of these things that we've been taught, they go totally against being an entrepreneur or a creator. And the other part that I was going to mention there is that we learn that other people are the authority. So any authority in our lives comes from somebody else. And again, the subconscious mind doesn't analyze. So it reaches a point where you believe just about anything other people tell you. They say, "Oh yeah, this is a fact," blah 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 blah. And a lot of times, of course, it's not. It's just a lie, or something they made up or heard somewhere, and it was wrong for them too. So the other thing that we have to learn is not only to control ourselves, which is not that easy. We also have to learn that we are the authority. We have the knowledge within us, and that's what coaching does. I'm sure you've all realized that. A coach knows that the answers are in there. We have the answers. We are the authority. And coaching and things like coaching, they just pull that knowledge out. So we have to learn to be our own authority. All right. Now, I'm going to take a quick question and answer break here if you guys want to type in any questions you have, and then afterwards I'll go on to the box breaking area. Any of you got any questions or comments or anything? I can grab a quick sip of my coffee here. No questions? Okay. All right, well, let's go into looking at some boxes and what we do about them. So there's my box breaking tools. I wish it was that easy to just take a hammer and get at it. That is probably the biggest part of the box. Social expectations. Like, we're very sociable people for the most part. We just do what other people expect of us, right? And that's good. It's nice to be able to get along with other people and do things, but we need to control our lives, as I said, and there are a lot of times that you just cannot go along with somebody else's expectations. Well, how come you didn't visit me? Sorry, Grandma, I have a webinar to give here. So you cannot continue to live up to other people's expectations. Okay, now I put together a course, and it is a box breaking course. And the first part of the course, before we actually start breaking down the barriers and so on, we need to look at the person themselves, you. We need to find out more about what your hopes, dreams, what your plans and goals are. To do that, we find out what inspires us. Those of you who've done the course, the Marketing Funnel Mastery course, will recognize this as part of the inspiration list that you build. Oh, excuse me. Got the hiccup. Hope that goes away. Anyway, so the first thing we do is make a list of all the things that interest you. Any subjects, anything you enjoy reading, that kind of thing, and you just work away at this list. Okay, you just sort of brainstorm it. That's what we do in the MFM course, but I take it a little further than that. Once you've listed out everything you can think of that interests you, then you stretch it into the past. I'm going to draw here. You stretch it into the past. Things that you enjoyed as a child. You know, things that interested you as a child. You know, were you fascinated by bugs or astronomy or, you know, anything, dinosaurs? I know I loved dinosaurs when I was a kid. And so you extend the list that way. And then you extend it into the future. What do you think you could be interested in? You know, and you really play with that list. You sort of brainstorm it, just let things run. The thing doesn't run really. Yeah, you just let things run. And next, you make another list, and this one is about what you enjoy doing. This is activities. And it doesn't matter what it is. If you enjoy doing it, write it down. You know, all right, I like to go out drinking with the boys. Okay, write it down. You know, it doesn't matter. Again, you make it as complete as possible, and you stretch it into the past. My pen's not working. Stretch it into the past again. Things you enjoy doing as a little kid. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. So you enjoy playing cowboys and Indians, or or doctors and nurses with the little girl next door. That was one of my favorites. Anyway, and then again you stretch it into the future as far as you can think. What would you like to try sometime? What would you like to do sometime? And then you write that. You take the two lists and when they're as complete as you can make them, you prioritize them. You know, you put the things that you enjoy the most at the top and so on. Don't leave anything out. Leave everything on the list, even if you don't think it's, you know, something that you enjoy that much anymore. Just leave it on there anyway. It's going to come in handy. Now you should spend a lot of time doing these two lists, even if you set them aside and, you know, just jot some extra ideas that come up during the day. Just jot them down. And it's important that you make these lists as big and as complete as you can. As I say, just free flow it. Just keep writing. Because from these lists, we're going to build a very solid foundation for yourself. Okay, so once they're complete, I don't have any more slides to show you. No. Now, once they're complete, you start to look through them and like from the top, go through them from the top. And what you're looking for is, what is it about that interest or that activity? What is it exactly about that excited me or interested me? Okay, you're looking for the thing. All right, so if you wrote down here, well, I like going out and drinking with the boys. Well, what is it about that really interests you? Do you enjoy getting drunk? Do you enjoy the taste of the beer? Do you enjoy the company? Do you enjoy the chat? Do you do, what exactly is it about? What makes that fun to do? Okay, and you keep doing that. You go down all your list and you figure out what it is that interests you about each item. Now, if you got the same answer for a few questions, that's fine. Just write it once. And once you've gone through it all, then you take that again. You should have another list, a lot shorter list, and you should realize that, okay, now this is why I like this, and this is why I like that. So now the next thing is you take that smaller list, and again, you want to look through a common thread that runs through all of it. It's going to be one thing that you're trying to accomplish by learning or doing these things. I don't want to give you any sort of ideas on this, but maybe, all right, I enjoy meeting people. Good, okay. Does that cover the whole thing? Well, no, I was interested in science too. Okay, well, what was it about science? Well, I like to know stuff. Okay, so you build up this list and you keep looking at it and playing around. What is there in common with meeting people and knowing things and so on? And if you keep at it and you keep breaking it down, you start to get more and more excited about it. And once you find the thing, and there will be one thing there, it's going to be a major breakthrough. It's going to be a major, whoa, that's what it's all about. Yeah, I mean, look at this. This covers everything there. That's why I like it. Look. And you should get really excited about it. And why you get excited about it is because if you've done this properly, then you will have found your purpose in life. It's your whole life purpose. And it's going to be a major life purpose. So you write that down. It's a very important thing. This is a foundation that you can work from, and you can align your whole future built on this. Any future actions that you take, anything you do in the future, if it doesn't align with that purpose that you just found, then you're off purpose. And you can look at it and go, I don't want that. That's not why I'm here. So it's an important couple of lists to play, but as I say, don't just sort of rush through it. Take your time. Oh, there goes the dog. So you just rush through it. I don't rush through it. Okay. Now, once that basic foundation is in place, then we can move on to the next part, the major part of the course, actually locating the different areas and so on, and removing all of these fixed ideas and false information and so on. And once we've done that, once we've removed all that false data, then you find you, basically, because once all the garbage is gone, the only thing left is you, and that's yeah, it's your truth, okay? So you know when somebody's lying to you, you just compare it to your truth. Now, is that true for me or not? And you look at stuff. I always laugh when I see commercials on the TV or the internet or something, especially the TV ones like beer commercials. If you drink one of my beer, you're going to be suddenly surrounded by beautiful people. Well, I'm sorry, that's not true. And yet a lot of people, they fall for it. They don't, you know, in the back of their minds, they know it's not true, but, you know, how do you go out and get a date? You know, oh, you got to go out and get drunk. You know, they basically know it's not true, but it still sits there in the back of the mind that that's what they have to do. And so, of course, that's what they feel compelled to do. So there's a lot of areas in a person's life, and we have to look at the whole lot. I've got 9 down here, 9 of them: self, family, friends, work or business, um, community, mankind, the environment, material things, which would include money, and spiritual. Now, you may have more that you'd like to add to it, but don't take it any less than this. To be really successful, each of these areas needs to balance. Now, some of them are more important than others. Like they won't all be of equal importance to you, but they should still be addressed. Say, for example, somebody, they're looking at the work and business here, and they want to make a lot of money, so they're working in this area and this area, and they totally forget about these. So they become a workaholic, lose their family, and probably end up as an alcoholic. So you have to balance all of this stuff. Now, I'm not going to be able to tell you about all the tools. It's going to take too long. We don't have time for me to tell you all of the tools that I use to break the ideas and stuff in these areas. I'm not sure I'd want to anyway, because then you might not take the course. But anyway, the course, the tools that I give to break these ideas and so on, the ideas that we have about these different things, the buried ideas, how to bring them to the surface and how to look at them and evaluate, you know, is this true? Is it not true? Is it true for me? Or is it partially true? It may not be a lie, but, you know, it might only be partially true. So I put together a bunch of tools to help you find out, dig them out, take a good look at them, and then either get rid of them, blow them apart, or realign them so that they do fit with your truth. And that's important. Okay. And when I first started putting the course together, I was actually it was going to be just the first part there, you know, the couple of lists, so it was going to be a minor, little inexpensive product. And I knew that worked because I've used that, years, 10 or 15 years ago, I learned that, or started to learn that from a friend of mine. So I know that works, it's beautiful. But the second part of the course that I've been putting together there, I've been using some of my family as guinea pigs, particularly my niece and a nephew and my brother-in-law, and so I've been using them as guinea pigs. And I realized, just seeing the results on them, that this is actually an extremely large and powerful product. I didn't realize just how much it would take to get somebody through this, because I've been using these tools for myself for years, you know, and you can use them on a continual basis to continually grow and find more of your own truth. But anyway, I realized that this is a major course, and it's actually going to take a lot of coaching, because you cannot do it entirely by yourself. It's going to take a lot of coaching. So I'm going to have to talk to Mike and say, Mike, can I get together with some of your coaches there, you know, do a bit of business? Anyway, that's about what I had to say here. I don't think I missed anything. Does anybody want to make any comments or questions or anything else? I can just pull up the chat here. Yeah, I would say about that right. That's about right. The instructions written on the outside. Yeah. It's very hard to look at your own forehead, isn't it? Are there any other questions or any other comments, or are we ready to wind her down and go to bed? All right. Okay, well, again, I thank you very much for being here. I hope you got something out of this. I enjoyed it. I actually, Nell Rose is on the webinar here, and she'll tell you I had a lot of problems getting this all together. I don't think I really wanted to do it. I didn't want to do a seminar, and which is kind of strange because I've spoken on stage so many times, and I'll get up in front of a whole crowd, you know, a couple of hundred people, and give a speech or a live seminar, and I enjoy it. You know, it doesn't bother me in the least. Uh, and that's crazy because in a live seminar, if you're not doing any good, people can throw stuff at you. At least on the internet, if I did a lousy job, you wouldn't be able to physically throw anything at me. Anyway, I think it's because there isn't the same feedback. You know, when you're giving a live speech, you can actually see people, and you know, you get some idea of the energy in the room. And that's kind of hard with the internet. But it's been interesting. I think I'll try and do a few more and see how it goes. And again, thank you all for being here. And thank you, Nell Rose, for coaching me through my back off on this. And I hope you have a really good night.